From the Ministry of the Presidency in Georgetown, this is This Week with the President.
Welcome to This Week with the President, a news magazine which provides you with an in-depth look at the policies, programs, and work of the President of Guyana in his quest to realize the good life for all Guyanese. I'm your host, Granger. Thank you for joining us. In the highlights of this week, the Constitution must prevail in selection of GCOM's chairman. Ghana Defense Force gets new Chief of Staff. Third female senior counsel receives a silk. And government reiterates support for Ghana Press Association. Those stories and more on This Week with the President. Last November, Dr. Steve Surridge-Bally announced his resignation from the post of chairman of the Ghana Elections Commission, GCOM, effective on the last day of that month. As per the prescriptions of the Constitution, the leader of the opposition must provide a list of 6 nominees to the president for consideration. The article first outlines clearly that, quote, the chairman of the Elections Commission shall be a person who holds or who has held office as a judge of a court having unlimited jurisdiction in civil and criminal matters in some part of the Commonwealth, or a court having jurisdiction in appeals from any such court, or who is qualified to be appointed as any such judge, end of quote. Following these stipulations, the Constitution does allow for any other fit and proper person to be appointed by the President from a list of 6 persons identified after meaningful consultation. Despite these stipulations outlined in the Constitution, the leader of the opposition submitted a list of names which included Major General retired Norman McLean, attorney and political analyst Mr. Christopher Ram, former chairman of the Private Sector Commission Mr. Ramesh Duku, Peace and Governance Consultant Mr. Lawrence Lachman Singh, businesswoman Ryan Shaw, and Professor James Rose. Though the list provided does contain the name of Mr. Christopher Ram, who was admitted to the bar in 2009, this is the first time a senior counsel or person qualified to be a judge or a former or current judge has not been included on a list submitted by an opposition leader. President Granger subsequently requested that the curricula vitae of the nominees be provided to him, and upon careful examination of same, concluded that the opposition leader's list is not in keeping with Article 1612, beyond the fact that it provides 6 names. With President Granger finding the list of nominees provided to him unacceptable and falling short of the constitutional requirements, he then wrote to the opposition leader requesting that another list be submitted, in keeping with the requirements which have been defined in the Constitution. The Constitution states that if the leader of the opposition fails to submit a list as provided for, the President shall appoint a person who holds or has held office as a judge of a court having unlimited jurisdiction in civil and criminal matters in some part of the Commonwealth, or a court having jurisdiction in appeals from any such court, or who is qualified to be appointed as any such judge.
I cited the Constitution to him. I'm not playing politics. I'm serious about the appointment of the chairman of GCOM, and as far as I can see, the Constitution is very, very clear. Mr. Jaggio did write to me, and as you know, he asked for some clarification. Well, as I said, it has now gone into the legal zone, and we are going to ensure that he gets the legal clarification that he needs.
The opposition leader has since written to the President seeking clarification on the matter, and President Granger said that these clarifications will be provided since the government has no interest in playing politics with such matters.
In terms of names, I'm not in the business of naming names at this stage. I'm in the business of satisfying the constitutional requirements for the appointment. So that's as much as I can say at this stage. The law will prevail, and we will continue to engage the leader of the opposition as required under the Constitution. So I have not disengaged. I have examined his letter, and a response will be sent. But as I said, for the benefit of you, for the benefit of the public, we are looking at everything within a legal framework, not within the framework of politics or within the framework of personalities.
The head of state emphasized that regardless what obtained in the past, now that the responsibility has been vested in him as President of Guyana, the provisions of the Constitution will be followed. With regard to his acceptance of the nomination for the GCOM chairmanship by late President Hugh Desmond Hoyt in 2000, the President said that the Constitution explicitly states the requirements for the position.
My understanding is that at all material times, a member of the legal profession or several members of the legal profession were on the list. But my acceptance of the nomination or my having a name on the list does not necessarily mean that I must accept the 6 names which are submitted. So it doesn't follow what the lawyers would call as a non sequitur. The point is, even if the Constitution had been breached or if a nomination be made in breach of the Constitution, 10 or 20 years ago, there's no need to repeat it. So that is not a precedent. I don't accept that. I am accepting now as President that the constitutional provisions must be applied.
Mr. Jagdeo has contended that the Constitution does allow any other fit and proper person to be appointed by the President from a list of 6 persons, identified after meaningful consultation. However, Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Mr. Bassel Williams said that the determination of what is fit and proper is at the sole discretion of the head of state, and that every person submitted on the list presented by the Leader of the Opposition should meet that requirement.
All 6 persons are required to be acceptable to the President. Therefore, if you bring in 3 of your persons and not in the range, you're actually reducing the options of the President. So it is beholden on the Leader of the Opposition to always provide a list of 6 acceptable persons, or as they say, 6 persons not unacceptable to the President. He is the decision maker. And that's the point. The President is doing nothing wrong. In fact, he's invited the Leader of the Opposition to send another list. And as I said, he could do that several times until the Leader of the Opposition get it right, and he has to get it right.
Expanding on the legal qualifications set out by the Constitution, where Article 1612 on 4 occasions refers to judge-level qualifications, Minister Williams said that the President believes that the Constitution should be followed thoroughly in the selection of a chairman for such an important post.
The President, in relation to appointing a chairman of GCOM, could appoint a current judge or a former judge of a court having unlimited jurisdiction in civil and criminal matters in any part of the Commonwealth. And also a court have that a judge who would have sat or has experience in a court sitting on appeal from decisions of such courts. And third, the President can appoint a person who's qualified to be a judge. So if you have a lawyer in private practice, for example, of some standing and capacity, perhaps a senior counsel in practice, the President could properly appoint such a person if he considers that person is fit and proper.
The Constitution states, and I quote, provided that if the Leader of the Opposition fails to submit a list as provided for, the President shall appoint a person who holds or has held office as a judge of a court having unlimited jurisdiction in civil and criminal matters in some part of the Commonwealth, or a court having jurisdiction in appeals from any such court, or who is qualified to be appointed as any such judge. End of quote. Security and the safety of the Guyanese citizens have always been one of the top priorities of the David Granger-led administration. As Guyana deals with threats and border tensions with neighboring Venezuela, its military, being the primary organization responsible for border protection, is now more relevant than ever. The role of such an organization cannot be overemphasized, and as such, it must be led by the most suitable individual, not only in keeping with the force's succession policy discipline, but more importantly, having the ability to promote community development policies and maintaining the morale of the force. The Defense Board, chaired by the President, who also holds the ministerial portfolio for defense, in keeping with the succession policy of the GDF and the importance of the organization, has selected a new Chief of Staff in the person of Brigadier Patrick West. On January 10, President Granger, in his capacity as Commander-in-Chief, promoted Mr. West from the rank of Colonel to Brigadier before administering to him the oath of office as the new Chief of Staff of the Ghana Defense Force. The new Chief of Staff was also conferred with the National Award, the Military Service Star MSS, in recognition of his 33 years of dedicated service to the force. Brigadier West takes over command of the force from Brigadier George Lewis, who was sworn in on October 3, 2016. President Granger said that the appointment of Brigadier West is symbolic of due course.
So despite the brevity of his tenure, we were pleased to follow the correct procedure, and this brings us to the events today, in which Brigadier West was identified as the Inspector General, and this would lead to consequential advancements from among the other senior officers of the force. But this is in keeping with the commitment of the Defense Board to ensure that there is no future disruption to the development, the professional development of members of the Guyana Defense Force. So they could look forward to a comfortable and safe tenure of office without fear of recrimination or retribution. And this is how we expect the force to function.
He noted that the GDF, a 52-year-old institution, has been faced with numerous challenges over the years. However, its management must ensure that its challenges, both internal and otherwise, do not affect the quality of the work of the officers. The President also reminded officers of the force of their social responsibility and their oath to serve all Guyanese, regardless of their ethnicity, religion, or geographic location, and underscored the importance of professionalism, education, and training.
Professionalism is built on certain pillars, and the first pillar, evinced in the service of Brigadier West, is that of military education. As I've said over and over again, you wouldn't fly in a plane that is piloted by an untrained pilot, and the Defense Board will never advance to the rank of Chief of Staff, somebody who is completely untrained. And today we witness the advancement of an officer with 33 years service. He's completed all of his military courses at home and abroad, and his military education is comparable to anything we've seen in the past. So the first pillar of his professionalism is his professional education, and there's no way that anyone could criticize the professional education of Brigadier West.
Meanwhile, the new Chief of Staff said that being elevated to the helm of the force was not something he had initially envisioned until a few years ago when he realized that there was a possibility.
Well, I never thought a day like today would have arrived. Until a few years ago, I saw the possibility of being the Chief of Staff, and I realized that I needed to broaden my horizon. So, as the Commander-in-Chief had said, I completed all my required professional military education and my academic education as well, so that I could provide a relevant balance and direction, strategic and otherwise, to the force.
Brigadier West pledged to be not just a Chief of Staff whose watchword is professionalism. He also committed to ensuring that the GDF is transformed in the interest of total national defense. The new Chief of Staff enlisted in the GDF on September 1, 1984, and was commissioned on August 28, 1985, following which he was posted to the Artillery Battalion. During his 33 years of service, he held several appointments in the force, from platoon commander to commanding officer in both the artillery and infantry units. He replaces Brigadier Lewis, who enlisted in the Army on September 1, 1981, and was commissioned after completing the Standards Officers Course number 11 in August 1982. A military parade was held at Base Camp Ghana, where Brigadier Lewis ceremonially handed over command of the force to Brigadier West.
Brigadier Patrick West.
Delivering his farewell speech, Brigadier Lewis said that though his tenure at the helm of the force, the GDF had to deal with some challenging issues. He believed that its members acquitted themselves well and the organization is better off today. He charged all the current commanders to ensure that the soldiers never lose confidence in their ability to lead them.
I realized that I was most fortunate to be in command of troops for most of it. What I loved the most was the opportunity to interact with our soldiers, to share their thoughts, to listen to them, and generally to mentor them. My experience was that they always had things to say that made you learn something new. So much so that today I am forced to reflect on the words of General Colin Powell, and I quote, "The day the soldiers stop bringing their problems is the day you stop leading them. They have either lost confidence that you can help them or concluded that you do not care. In either case, it is a failure of leadership," unquote. That has never happened to me, and I exhort all serving commanders to work assiduously to ensure that your soldiers never lose confidence in your ability to lead them. I implore each and every commander to listen to your soldiers. Do not let them stop bringing their problems to you, and do not let them lose confidence in you. Do remember that soldiers can also think and have ideas of their own.
President Granger has recognized the indispensable role that women play in national, regional, and international development. This was demonstrated when he acknowledged the work of 51 Guyanese women by the conferral of national awards over the 2 years that he has been at the helm of the country. The president believes that it is a tangible demonstration of the government's policy position on gender equality, and it is lined with President Granger's commitment to making Guyana a more equal society. Bearing the responsibility of naming senior counsels, the head of state has ended not only the 20-year-old break in the awarding of silk, but further the absence of women from the elite list of legal practitioners. Justice Roxanne George Wilshire, Miss Rosalie Robertson, and Justice Claudette Singh are the first 3 to have ever been elevated to this status in the country. Attorney General Mr. Bassett Williams, Mr. Neil Boston, Mr. Charles Fungafat, Mr. Clifton Louiswell John, Mr. Rafi Khan, and Mr. Vidyanan Prasad are the other legal practitioners to receive the honor. Justice Singh, who was out of the country when the other new senior counsels received their commissions of appointment, attended a special ceremony at State House on Wednesday, where she was conferred with the honor. The president said that it is unacceptable that after almost 50 years of independence in the country, a female has never been made a senior counsel.
I personally find it unacceptable that in 50 years of independence, we could not find a single female attorney to bestow silk. And I'm aware of the quality of your work, the quality of work that was achieved in the Guyana Association of Lawyers, the quality of work that was achieved in the chambers of the Solicitor General, DPP, and the AG's chambers. And I have no qualms about the awards. I think I didn't set out to make history, I just set out to be fair. And I think history will show that the decisions I made in this matter were unbiased and they were based on recognition of the professional quality of all the nominees.
With some 40 years of experience, Justice Singh was called to the bar in London in 1973 and admitted to the bar in Guyana in 1976. Justice Singh served as a Deputy Solicitor General and as a puisne judge and a Justice of Appeal. During her tenure at the Chamber of the Attorney General, she spearheaded the modernization of the Justice Reform Project and is currently serving as the Guyana Police Force's legal advisor. The head of state said that ensuring that these appointments, which were last made in 1996, are presented to deserving candidates on an annual basis will have a positive impact on the rest of the profession, as young lawyers will work to make sure that their conduct is in keeping with the criteria set out for senior counsel appointment.
But I think the public as a whole must understand that in years to come, juniors will become seniors. And people will learn to seek to achieve and acquire the criteria which have been laid down. One is integrity, and the other is knowledge of the law and the performance of their professional duty. The experience that they bring to bear on their duties, and of course their commitment to what I call some sense of social responsibility. You know, it's not a reward for money grubbers, it's a reward for people who love the law and who excel in the law.
Justice Singh said that the elevation to senior counsel is something to aim and strive for, noting that in order to achieve this honor, integrity and professionalism and experience are the watchwords.
Every senior counsel should endeavor to see that there is public respect for the administration of justice.
A free and unfettered press is an important pillar in any democracy. Serving to keep the people informed and on behalf of the people, hold public officials accountable in the exercise of their duties to the people. With that freedom, the local media also bears the responsibility of ensuring the highest possible standards and commitment to the tenets of their profession. President David Granger on Sunday at the annual media brunch at State House reiterated his support to the Guyana Press Association, the GPA, to aid training and educational programs and workshops which will help to build capacity in the media fraternity. Education, the president said, is a critical element of professionalism, particularly in a field which can influence the thinking power of the average population.
I see today not as a day of hostility or hatred. It's one of friendship, it's one of fellowship. And I hope that as we keep on meeting in this environment, we would improve the relations between state and the media and within the media community itself. I regard the media, I regard journalism as a profession, and I always refer to the three principles of professionalism which should encourage all journalists. The first principle is education. I believe journalists should be trained, they should have the expertise, and they should have experience.
The head of state noted that there are no strings attached to the support, even as he stated that while his government is receptive to criticisms, these must be made on a factual basis. The media, he said, must truthfully and critically examine the work of his administration.
I don't have a problem with criticism. I have a problem with recklessness and dishonesty. People depend on you, and they must be able to depend on a professional approach to the handling of this public information. And you have many warnings all over the world. You can see the damage that could be done when people are allowed to say what they like, publish what they like, broadcast what they like, without the guidance, without the caution, without the experience of a media community like the Guyana Press Association.
President Granger further noted that it is important that persons must be trained regardless of the field in which they operate and must abide by certain ethical standards.
The second pillar of professionalism is your social responsibility. That is, you have to speak the truth. There are people out there in Awariwa now, there are people there in Obadiah and Hotokwai who will read what you write and think it's the truth. They see it in black and white. So you have an obligation to tell those people, whether it's by film, whether it's in print, whether it's by voice, whether it's through the social media, you have a responsibility to be truthful. It's hard to find out what is truth. You remember in John, at the trial of Jesus, Jesus made some statements and Pilate said, "What is truth?" If you check, Jesus didn't respond. But you must always ask yourselves, what is truth? Did you ask the person who is being criticized for his or her opinion? Or do you just publish something because it was given by one side?
Pointing out that the GPA plays a vital role in the functioning of the media in Guyana, the president said that it must fulfill its corporate solidarity, the third pillar, which speaks to addressing libelous and inaccurate articles which may be fed to the public.
You come from a community, a media community. And in that community, you exercise influence on each other. You're not a union, as Karl Marx said. You are, Neil. You're not a union, but you exercise influence. And that influence could bring about change for the good. You are self-governing. You're not members of a department of the government. You regulate your own behavior, your own conduct. That is why 72 years ago, something called the Guyana Press Association was established, so that the journalists could come together, not only in friendship and fellowship, but also to maintain high professional standards.
Meanwhile, President of the GPA, Mr. Neil Marks, in brief remarks, thanked the President for his support.
The Guyana Press Association welcomes your forthrightness in being willing to work with us, because myself and my colleagues agree that in Guyana the media faces various challenges, press freedom being one of them, and that remains a problem both in the public and the private media.
Now we take a look at the President's diary. On Wednesday, the President, in accepting the letters of credence from the new ambassador of Nepal to Guyana, Dr. Arjun Kumar Karki, said that as Guyana continues to push the development of a green agenda, it has much to learn from the Federal Democratic Republic of Nepal in the area of forest and natural assets conservation. President Granger said that Guyana and Nepal share common vulnerabilities to the adverse effects of climate change, and as such, his government has taken note of Nepal's promotion of community forest management.
Guyana, a low-lying coastal state, is susceptible to the effects of rising sea levels, flood, drought, and environmental hazards. Nepal, a landlocked state, as you pointed out, also faces increased threats, including climate-induced threats. We are both rich in hydroelectric potential. Our two countries can learn from each other's experience in developing climate change adaptation plans and in promoting renewable energy development.
Meanwhile, the newly accredited Nepalese ambassador to Guyana, in his remarks, said that Nepal places great importance on the relationship it shares with Guyana, since ties were established on goodwill, understanding and strong bonds of friendships 23 years ago.
Sovereignty, equality, independence, territorial integrity, mutual respect, and the principle of Panchashila have been the bedrock of our relation. These values are multifaceted and they encompass a broad spectrum of political, socio-economic, cultural, and many more dimensions. We are optimistic that Nepal and Guyana will be able to take our relationship to a new height. The bond that we build will be based on trust and mutual benefit that are consistent with our potential and the aspiration of our people.
On that same day, the head of state accepted the letters of credence from Mr. Mustafa Alahi, the new non-resident ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran to Guyana, at the accreditation ceremony at State House. Mr. Alahi said that the relationship between the two countries has always been characterized by peace and friendship and has been based on goodwill and benevolent aspirations by the two governments. He noted, therefore, that the potential for the strengthening of ties between the two countries holds great promise.
At the national level, both countries possess vast resources of particular and specific importance in different terms needed for development. They are complementary to each other. Both governments are in a position to identify and employ them within a meaningful program and plan of action. At the international political and economic level, both countries are the members of the United Nations, the Non-Aligned Movement, and the G77. There are many areas within which both countries can support each other and combine their efforts to advance common interests within the framework of the Charter of the United Nations. In this context, both governments, in our view, possess capacities and capabilities to even harness their abilities in the interest of South-South cooperation.
President Granger, in welcoming the ambassador to Guyana, said that since Guyana established diplomatic ties with the country in June 1985, both nations have always maintained cordial relations.
There exist several possibilities for us to expand our cooperation, especially in the fields of agriculture, food production, technology, and hydroelectrical energy generation, thus expanding the existing capacity and furthering South-South cooperation.
As Guyana continues to advance its green agenda, the president said that the ambassador's appointment can serve as a catalyst for the enhancement of relations, particularly in this area. The president also met with the military deputy commander of the United States Southern Command, SOUTHCOM, Lieutenant General Joseph DeSalvo, at State House. He was accompanied by United States Ambassador to Guyana, Mr. Perry Holloway, and a team from his organization. During that meeting, President Granger and General DeSalvo discussed regional security with reference to transnational crimes and the strengthening of regional security mechanisms. Guyana's head of state also used the opportunity to update the delegation on the Guyana-Venezuela border controversy and on the country's Green State agenda. On Friday last, the head of state, who is the current chairman of the Caribbean Community, met with Secretary General of the body, Ambassador Erwin LaRocque, and a delegation from the Secretariat, which included Advisor to the Secretary General, Mr. Neville December, and Executive Director, Human Resource Management at the CARICOM Secretariat, Ms. Charmaine Atkinson Jordan. President Granger assumed the chairmanship on January 1, 2017, as per the rotation schedule for the chairmanship of the Conference of Heads of Government. As such, Guyana will host the 28th intersessional meeting of CARICOM Heads of Government, which is slated for February 16th to 17th. It is often said that behind every successful man is a good woman. However, First Lady Sandra Granger has turned that old saying on its head, demonstrating that alongside a successful president is an equally successful First Lady, toiling side by side to ensure the good life for all Guyanese. This week on Beyond the Presidency, we once again take a look at the Self-Reliance and Success in Business Workshop, one of the main projects emanating from the office of the First Lady. Through her Self-Reliance and Success in Business workshops, geared at developing the entrepreneurial skills of women across the country, a better life has been forged for many. With hundreds of women in numerous communities benefiting in more than 6 regions, the First Lady has not slowed her pace down, but is determined to ensure that every ambitious woman gets the necessary tools to develop themselves.
One of my concerns was very often Women tend to say, well, you know, I don't do anything or I don't know anything, but they do not recognize the skills that they have developed from being women, because they manage households, they care for children, they're cooks, they're laundresses, they're financial advisors, they're counselors, and they have all sorts of skills.
On Monday last, more than 40 women joined Mistress Granger for the opening of the 13th Self-Reliance and Success in Business Workshop for 2017 at Kildonan East Berbice, Quarantine, Region 6. Speaking at that ceremony, Mrs. Granger said that women should value their skills and not only be dependent on their male partner, but also be empowered and use it to empower themselves to avoid dependence on their partners.
And one of the things Mr. Armagon didn't mention that we recognized as we were going along is that some of the women were saying, if I can get on my own feet economically, financially, I could leave this abusive relationship. Because many times women stay in an abusive relationship, put up with domestic violence because they feel they have nowhere to go. They feel they are dependent on this partner. One of the things that I feel is very important, that women begin to understand themselves and to recognize what is in them.
During the 5-day period, the women will learn the basic steps involving the planning and developing of business ideas, which is comparable with the format provided by Small Business Bureau. They will also form small groups to focus on the predominant social issues affecting their communities. Director of Interweave Solutions Incorporated, Mr. Wayne Barrow, said that these group initiatives are major successes coming out of the workshop, as it allows the women to be empowered to directly impact their own communities.
Because we want to get people out of poverty. And that's the First Lady's aim. Get you out of poverty to a level where you are self-reliant. And when we speak of self-reliance, we're talking about the ability, the commitment, and the effort to provide for yourself and for your family. You're not begging any Tom, Dick, and Harriet. That's our aim.
Echoing the sentiments of Mr. Barrow, Regional Chairman of Region 6, Mr. David Armagon said that the First Lady's initiative is a great one, reaching rural communities, and is very beneficial to women. He said that rural communities can gain from this type of initiative, since those are the areas mostly affected with women who have been relegated to their homes.
I believe that any initiative that is geared towards empowering our women folk, especially in rural communities, is a very excellent idea, and I wish to commend you for this exercise that you'll be doing for the next 5 years.
The Self-Reliance and Success in Business Workshop has, over the last year, trained over 300 women to be successful entrepreneurs and empowered women. This is the first workshop for 2017 and is expected to continue next week with another workshop in Region 3, Essequibo Islands, West Demerara. With that, we've come to the end of this week's edition of This Week with the President. Thank you for joining me. For regular updates on the Ministry of the Presidency, go to our website at www.motp.gov.gy, like our Facebook page, Ministry of the Presidency, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at MOTP Guyana. Do have a safe and blessed rest of the week, Guyana. Goodbye.